G'day guys, Aaron Royle here, Australian triathlete, represented Australia at the Rio Olympics and former under-23 world champion. Thanks for joining me on the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust as always you've been having a great week and you've been out there kicking some physical performance goals. Talking about physical performance goals, Lisa Jane Waitman. She has been kicking some serious marathon goals in recent times, including her incredible performance, the London 27 Marathon, where she finished an impressive 5th. And if you happen to miss Lisa's interview, then that featured on episode 60 of the Physical Performance Show, so be sure to jump back and tune in to Lisa. She shared around how she's juggled for the better part of her career a full-time, quite demanding executive career with IBM, and also the raising of her beautiful little boy Pete, how she juggles it, how she performs at her best, her upcoming goals, the highs and the lows. It was all there on episode 59, and thanks to the listeners that have been feeding back not episode 59, episode 60, thanks to the listeners who've been feeding back about Lisa's sharings. It means a lot to both myself and Lisa, so really appreciate that, guys. Today, as always, we are catching up with another inspiring physical performer. Today, we catch up with Australian Olympic triathlete Aaron Royle. More on Aaron in a moment. As always, today's show is lovingly brought to you by POGO Physio. We exist to help you perform at your physical best, and we do this through our industry-first, fixed fee and unlimited access 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs. We want everyone who walks through the doors of POGO Physio to get a high-five moment where they've finished their rehabilitation, and that's what we call your finish line. We ensure this occurs through removing the barrier of costly session-to-session attendance. Don't just settle for the treatment that you can afford on a session-to-session basis. Rather, get the treatment that you'll most benefit from. So if that means that for your injury rehabilitation, you need to be on the treatment table every day of the week, then that's what we do at POGO Physio through our 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs at no extra cost to you. You'll also get access on the 6 and 12-week programs to unlimited active rehabilitation on state-of-the-art equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, all the clinical Pilates reformers and equipment, and even the Galileo whole body vibration therapy machine. Also included in the finish line programs is access to allied health such as podiatry and remedial massage. So if you're serious about your injury rehabilitation, be sure to jump over, check out pogophysio.com.au and the finish line programs. And great news, we will be setting sail outside of Queensland in the coming months with the launch of POGO Partners, so check out a POGO practice as they come to you in the other states of Australia. A massive thank you, as always, to you, the listeners, who obviously make this show possible. I don't take it lightly. I really appreciate any little bit of feedback I get in any way, whether it's social media, a word in person, or a review on iTunes. And a massive thank you this week to Calm Gallo. And Calm rated the program 5 stars with the title, Excellent Interview with Tim Burkle. I listened to this podcast today and found it very informative. Great work by Brad and Tim Burkle. Must be congratulated on his openness and sincerity in discussing his career as a pro triathlete. Highly recommended and well done to both Brad and Tim. Calm Gallo, thanks so much for taking time to leave a review on the program. And Tim Burkle, if you're listening in, there's a great bit of feedback for your share-ins. And listeners, if you missed Tim's share-ins, Tim Van Burkle, Ironman Triathlon Champion, be sure to jump back through the archives. It's only a few episodes ago, and you'll enjoy Tim sharing, as Calm Gallo says, very openly and transparently about the highs and the lows of his career. And if you're listening in and you've been thinking about leaving a review, then I want to encourage you to do it now. Jump over to iTunes. You can do that from your PC and leave a review. Just click ratings and reviews and rate away. 1 star if you think it's okay, 5 stars if you're really enjoying the program and getting a lot out of it. And you can't do that, unfortunately, through a tablet or your iPhone or device. You actually need to be on a PC or a desktop computer. So if you're out there running around wanting to leave a review, sorry, but you'll have to jump onto your computer at home. So, guys, today's guest is Mr. Aaron Royle, Australian Olympic Triathlon representative for the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. And on today's program, Aaron shares around how he got started in the sport of triathlon, his nickname Bugs and where it came from, his current training status over in Yorkshire, I can't say it with the accent, training alongside some of the world's best, if not the world's best, short course triathletes, Johnny and Alistair Brownlee. He even lets us in on a little insight into what it's like training with the brothers, the famous triathlon brothers. Aaron also shares around the beginnings of his triathlon career, how his parents really gave him a loving ultimatum between swimming and running, and how he then fell in love with triathlon. Aaron's sporting prowess is undisputed. Aaron was the 2012 Under-23 World Triathlon Champion. I recall Aaron winning that race. I was in New Zealand that year myself, racing at the World Championships in the 30 to 34 category. And Aaron in recent years has really cemented himself as one of the top handful of guys on the ITU, International Triathlon Union World Triathlon Series, where Aaron will be preparing for the 2018 Commonwealth Games, vying for selection, and then beyond to Tokyo 2020. So this is a great interview with a really down-to-earth, top Aussie guy who is setting the world triathlon scene on fire. So let's jump straight in, Mr. Aaron Royle. So Aaron Royle, mate, it's absolutely great to have you on. We just shared off air there that one of the previous guests on the podcast, Ali Day, who was actually episode 1, requested that he hears from Aaron Royle and Ryan Gregson. So Ryan featured quite a few episodes ago. So Aaron, it's taken us a little bit longer to capture you, mate. So thanks for jumping on.
No, thanks very much for having me, and glad Ali gets what he's asked for. He was the first one on the podcast, I guess, so he should be getting that. But no, yeah, happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
So Aaron, let's start with something a little bit fun out of the gate, and that's what's one thing that scares Aaron Royle?
God. Well, I don't know if you've seen the footage of the sharks swimming around in Fingal Bay, down in Port Stephens area. There was a lot of fish in the bay, and that's where I grew up swimming quite a lot. And I've always had a bit of a fright for open water swimming and sharks, even though we're in the water with my job quite a lot. So I guess maybe that's something. I don't know. But
any close encounters over all your years of competing, Aaron? Obviously hailing from Australia.
Yeah. No, well, to be honest, I've only seen one, and it did scare the Jesus out of me, and I got it straight out of the water. But it was only a tiny little reef shark, and it was a fair bit away from us. But I remember I was actually swimming in Wollongong with a couple of my training partners who I used to train with, and someone would know Brendan Sexton, who was a 2012 Olympian triathlete. I was swimming with him and a few others, and we both dove down. We were looking in a crab fishing pot, actually, to see whether there was any crabs down in there. And there was a few of us there. And Brendan and I went down, and then we popped our heads back up, and we just calmly said to each other, "Did you see that?" And he said yes. And we're like, "All right, let's not panic in front of the guys, but let's just get ourselves into shore." So that's the one and only time, and I don't want to see any more, to be honest.
And what sort of shark do you think it was, Aaron?
I don't know. It wasn't a big one. It was. I mean, it would have hurt me if if it was hungry, but I think I might have been able to fight it off, done a bit of a Mick Fanning to the shark.
That's all Aussies do. Well, mate, how did this triathlon journey get started for you? I understand, at one point your parents said choose between swimming, I believe, and running. But can you take us back, just give us and listeners the Aaron Royle origin story?
Yeah, so I grew up in Newcastle. Both my brother and myself. So my brother's a couple of years older than I am. We both just grew up doing swim squad. My parents would take us to Walls End Warriors, that was called actually, and would swim there a couple of times a week. And that progressed over the years. And then just through fitness of swimming, I was doing okay in the cross country and the long distance school stuff. I'd never ran before, but I just went to the school zone cross country when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. I can't remember the exact age, and I won that, and that progressed to regional, then stayed, and I made it to national and got a national cross country medal. And all of a sudden I was like, you can actually run okay as well. And then just from there, over the years, I balanced up between running at national level and swimming at national level. And I think I was still quite young at the time, but I was performing both, like I said, at national level for both swimming and running, and doing quite well in both. But it was becoming quite a strain on the family and myself. And I'm obviously not quite old, or wasn't that old then. I was still doing school. So my parents sat me down and they're like, look, you're doing too much. You're too young. You're missing out on a lot of things that young kids do. I think you need to choose between one of the two. And prior to that, I had done a few triathlons, but literally on a mountain bike, and just had a bit of fun. And I said, well, how about I combine the two and add the bike in and make triathlon, which is not the answer I think they were expecting nor hoping. And I still remember to this day, Dad was like, okay. And then the next day he wrote down on a piece of paper, he's like, well, if you want to do triathlon, this is like the training that triathletes do. And I remember it was like swim morning, run the night, bike the next day. And it was quite full on for a young kid. And I'm like, I still want to do it. And I think he was hoping that, when I saw that maybe I would have changed my mind. And then just from that, I just progressed through the years in junior ranks.
Then certainly you did, and we'll get up to where you're crowning glory as the under-23 world champion 2012. But to go forwards, Aaron. So you said it was putting a bit of strain on your family. Do you mean the travel or the time or?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. By that I meant. It was just so much time sitting in the car, travelling to and from training to races. I still do remember a race that I did. We had Regional Athletics Championships, which was in Tamworth. For those that don't know, it's country New South Wales, up north a little bit of the mid-north coast, or not on the coast, but inland. And then that was on a Saturday, and I did a 1500 in the afternoon. And then at 6 a.m. the next morning in Orange, I had state junior triathlon championships, and I remember sitting in the car overnight. Dad drove from Tamworth to even further north than Tamworth. I can't even remember exactly where it was, but it was quite north in New South Wales, and then had to get all the way down to Orange by 6 a.m. the next morning. And we drove overnight and got there at about 3 a.m. Got a couple of hours sleep in a hotel, and I raced the next day. And so that's what I meant by it was a bit of a strain, and they had to travel a lot for my racing, and had to give up a lot of their own life as well, and which is, I guess, what a lot of parents do. They've sacrificed a lot for their kids to do the sport, but it was getting quite tough to juggle all of it, and still try and have a normal family life.
And Darren, what year was it that you really took to triathlon when you said to your parents, right, it's triathlon, and your dad came back with the program outline? What year was that?
So that was 2004. So at that stage, I was 14.
So little Bugsy was 14. Yeah, and at that point, could you have envisioned, when you said it's triathlon, Mum and Dad, the journey that you would now be on? Olympian, under 23 world champ. You must have known you had some talent.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, well, I got a bit of success quite early on in triathlon just through the nature of being talented swimmer and runner. I won't sit here and say that as a 14-year-old, this is exactly how I thought my career would be. But I guess most young kids have dreams and hopes that they want to go to the Olympics, and I was no different. Originally it was in swimming because that's what I grew up doing, and I idolised people like Grant Hackett and Ian Thorpe and Susie O'Neill, those type of swimmers early on, and I just loved Olympic sport, to be honest, not just in swimming though, and I always wanted to do that one day myself, but to actually do it, and like I've said before, that it's something that you dream of all your life, to go represent your country at the Olympics. But once you've done it, or once you've qualified to do it, was when I had this feeling. It was, wow, I never actually thought how I'd feel once I did that, and it was quite a surreal feeling actually for quite a while after.
Right, and we want to bottle that and get to that, mate, and unpack that. But what did you love about Olympic sport? What was it in particular that captivated you as this young teenager?
To be honest, I can't pinpoint exactly what it was, but I just remember every time the Olympics was on, the whole nation, Australia's sport mad, right? And they love to get behind the Olympics. And I grew up in a family that was no different. My parents loved sport, and we all got together as a family and used to watch it all the time. And actually, I remember it would have been 1998 Winter Olympics it was. And that was the first time I'd ever been exposed to that, because I was 8 years old. Watching the speed skating, and you know how the speed skaters skate along with their hands behind their back, and they turn the corner with using one arm. I remember running around the playground, and that's how I used to run around the playground during that time the Winter Olympics was on. I was just emulating what they were doing.
Doing a Stephen Bradbury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, it wasn't even around that. It was actually pre-Stephen Bradbury, but yeah, I mean, maybe speed skating was something that I may have had a calling to, but no, I can't pinpoint exactly what it is about the Olympics. It's just growing up in a culture within Australia where sport is, and especially when it comes to the Olympics, is quite a big deal, and I think that's what really drew the attraction to me.
And then, Aaron, your parents, were they sporty? Where do you think you got your genes from?
They probably like to think they were back in the day. They're very unsporty now. They like to. They're 60 odd now, so they have a holiday place up at Fingal Bay Caravan Park, which is an hour north of their home in Newcastle. They're there every weekend, and they go out to the club and have a drink and all that sort of stuff. So nowadays they're not very sporty. But yeah, I think they just loved sport in general, and they wanted myself and my brother Nathan to be active. And that's where it came from. Not so much that they weren't talented as such in their own sporting endeavours, but they wanted us to be quite active, and that's where it's come from, I think.
Well, they certainly planted the seeds. And Nathan, is he still active, or is he watching his brother and cheering his brother on?
He's doing that, yeah. So he did come to Rio to watch, and he's been to a few other big races as well. I think he dabbles in water polo. He is soccer mad, or football mad, I should say. You probably won't like me calling it soccer, but football mad. And he just works. So he's not taking anything serious now. He just loves to dabble in a few little things from time to time.
So,
but he does still claim that he can beat me over a 25-meter sprint. And to be honest, he's not. Yeah, he's a bigger lad, so he probably does have a bit more speed than me. So I probably won't take him up on that offer.
Yeah, leave that one alone. Bragging rights are unknown. Aaron, you finished school. So you finished school in Newcastle, presumably. And what were your next steps after school? I mean, were you tossing up, going on for tertiary studies, or were you like hell bent on throwing your energies into what's now a professional triathlon career?
So I finished school in Newcastle in 2007, and prior to finishing school, I had linked up with Jamie Turner, probably about 3 or 4 years prior to that, just at some of the junior triathlon camps that we used to have. And he was the New South Wales development coach at the time, or the junior coach. And so that's how I linked up with Jamie. And throughout some of the school holidays prior to finishing school, I'd go down to Jamie's place in Wollongong, and I'd do some training down there and get a glimpse of some of the athletes like Brendan Sexton and Aaron Densham. They were there. That was their sort of era when they were in Wollongong. whilst I was still at school. And so I always had in the back of my mind that when I finished school, I'd probably move down to Wollongong to train within that environment.
Yep.
And so when I finished at the end of 2007, I moved to Wollongong just over the summer for a couple of months to see whether I liked it. Then I went back home to Newcastle in the winter of 2008. And then at the back of the start of summer of 2009, I decided to make the move full-time. And at that stage, I was at the last year of my junior stage, and I made the Australian junior team to compete at the World Championships, which was on the Gold Coast. And at that stage, I hadn't started any tertiary education, but always planned on it, and my parents were always big on wanting me to have that to fall back on. And so after I did my last year of a junior, I did about 18 months, I think it was, of primary education at university before it got a little bit too tough to juggle travelling the world for 6 months of the year plus trying to become a teacher. So that's been put on the back burner for quite a while now. For
another day down the track, maybe, and maybe not. And there was any resistance to your career path, Aaron. I know that athletes sometimes have a wonderful amount of support from their loved ones and friends and colleagues, and other times there can be a bit of resistance to their decisions. But at that point, were there any, resistances to you going full time?
No, I think maybe initially my parents were a little bit sceptical that a professional triathlete was something that could be a career being made out of, or have a career through a professional triathlete. And when I first finished school, before going to Wollongong, my dad actually made me, he said, right, if you're not going to university, at least apply for, there was a couple of, being in Newcastle, it's a bit of a mining town. He made me apply for some electricianal jobs and mining jobs, apprenticeships that were going on at the time. I did a few interviews for that, and I never ended up getting a job for it, which made the decision a lot easier. But it was never something. I remember going to do the interviews going, well, this is not really what I want to do, but I'm just doing this to make them happy. But once I finally made the decision that I was going to go to Wollongong, then my parents fully supported that, and people around me supported that decision as well.
It's so uncanny, Aaron, listening to you share that story, that insight there reminds me of when Chris McCormack, Macca, shared 2 decades earlier, maybe more. He had a similar type experience in heading off to get a corporate job in the city. You probably know Chris's story.
Yeah,
and,
I know that. Yeah,
no approval really from his father, and it wasn't until he won the Open world title in Perth that year, and I think it was 2007, that his dad really was like, Chris, this, we support you, we're here for you, and So
I guess in that era as well, it probably was a little bit tougher to convince people because it's still quite a new sport now. I guess we can't keep always continuing to say that because it is growing and evolving, but especially back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, very few were making a career out of it. So I could fully understand where Chris's parents had raised concerns that that's what he wanted to do. And I've heard lots of stories about that era, they're just coming over to Europe and sleeping in the back of cars, on trains to save accommodation. That's a whole nother story we can go through. But I think back then it was quite tough to actually convince people around you that this was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, different era, but same, same, I guess, navigating the same challenge.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Aaron, you went through and obviously picked up that under-23 world title. I was actually there watching you race. I just raced the day before the age group world champs in the 30 to 34 category over in Auckland, and I think it was the day before or after, I can't remember the timing, but
I'm not sure.
I saw you obviously win that day, and it was really stamping your arrival in many ways in the wider triathlon community's lens. And so, mate, what did that do for your confidence, winning that under-23 world title?
Well, I mean, that was I guess a big pivotal moment in my career and stepping up into, I guess, the under-23 / elite category. But take you back a year earlier, I went to the under-23 world titles again, which were in Beijing in 2011. And I went into that race with the same ambitions and same goals. I wanted to go win. But going into that race, I didn't fully believe that I could win. I was telling myself that's what I wanted to do, but deep down I didn't believe that I could. Whereas going into 2012, the same thing. I wanted to win, but I fully believed that I was capable of winning. And I guess that helped trigger the mindset moving forward, that you have to be able to. It's good to just say this is what I want to do, but you have to believe that you can do that. And I guess in 2012, actually going to do that, what I believed that, or what I wanted to do, has helped moving forward. That I believe that I now belong amongst the top echelon of the ITU scene, and that sort of really helped progress the next few years along the way, and helped me gain the confidence that I needed to be able to step it up to that next level and sort of perform more consistently in the top handful.
What gave you the belief in 2012 versus 2011? What was different?
Well, I guess I talk about the training leading in. It was still to this day, it's almost the best block of training that I've had leading into a race, where just nothing went wrong. No injury, no illness for a good 6 weeks before. Hitting very good times and that sort of stuff. And I guess the belief came from that. But then also just belief in myself that I belonged there as well, where I didn't believe that I fully belonged within that calibre of athletes the year prior. And so that I get that those were the two things: the belief, the training that I did, and also believing that I belonged among those athletes is really what helped me believe that I could do it that year.
And can you remember what went through your head when you crossed the tape and realised you were the world champion?
To be honest, it is a bit of a blur, because it did come to almost a 5-way sprint finish. There's about at least 3 of us got onto the blue carpet together, which is the last 100 metres or so. It was a bit of a blur. To be honest, but my parents were there, and so I saw them quickly straight after the race, within a couple of minutes of finishing, actually, because they were right near the finish line, and they were quite ecstatic, and so I remember that night laying in bed going, wow, this feels pretty cool. This is my first ever big win. But at the exact time, no, it's all a bit of a blur.
Well, Aaron, I remember thinking, and obviously those close to the sport had been, aware of your potential and your caliber before the world title. But I remember thinking, this is a guy that can really start to mix it on that elite scene at the elite level with, the likes of the Brownlees and the Gomez's. And I remember thinking, what a great day for Triathlon Australia. So how did you then deal with what must have been a heightened expectation on you post the world title to consistently perform at that top level on the world scene?
Well, I guess I know it's a bit of a cliche, but whilst there's other people may have expectations on you, you've always got higher expectations of yourself. So that was never a problem for me. It was more I knew what I was capable of. It was just over the next few years post that. My results, I know you mentioned that consistently performed there, but I felt like I wasn't consistently performing there, and a lot of that came down to what did I have in 2013? I spent a couple of weeks in hospital with a hole in my lung. In 2014, I tore my calf in the start of the season. 2015, I had a bit of plantar fasciitis. So there was always a few little niggles that helped cost me, I feel, that getting the consistent results that I thought I was capable of. And so that's what that was always the biggest challenge, I feel. Not so much living up to other people's expectations. It was having the body getting the right, having the body being able to handle the training that I needed to do to be able to meet my own expectations. And that's all. And still to this day, I think I'm not alone. I think it's a lot of elite athletes' problems or their main concerns is staying healthy so that they can get the training done to be able to
Give their best.
Meet their expectations, yeah.
And it's interesting, often an answer, Aaron, to the first question, what's your greatest fear? The thing that scares you is underperforming, not living up to my potential. And so how did you get that hole in the lung? What's the story there?
So it come back to 2013 Madrid. So that was in May, Madrid World WTS race. And if anyone knows where the race is there, it's a putrid body of water that we swim in. It's very disgusting. You come out and you've got green slime all over you. And I don't even know, to be honest, I don't know how they've ever held a high quality race in that little pond. But anyway, we did a race there, and obviously I've just swallowed some water, as you do in a race, and two bacterial infections got into my lung, and they started to eat away at my lung, and because of that I got a pneumonia as well. So it was quite a nasty month, I guess. And I remember doing Madrid, and I actually did quite well there, because obviously it was not until after that that I suffered the effects from it. But I went and did that whole week after Madrid. I was very ill. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I just thought it was post-race. Your immune system's down, you're a little bit tired, you'll be right. So then stupidly I went and did a French Grand Prix the week later, and at that stage I would have had the hole in my lung. And I just remember racing, and for French Grand Prix you race for your club, so you've got different tri-suits, and I just thought that this tri-suit that I had on was super tight. And I was literally running around the course ripping it out from my neck, because I thought it felt like it was suffocating me. I couldn't breathe properly.
Oh, wow.
But as it turned out, I went that night, I was coughing up some blood, and the next day I was back into our European base at the time in Bilbao, in Vitoria in Spain. Went to a doctor there, and didn't leave the hospital for 2.5 weeks, because they put me straight onto some heavy antibiotics and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that was a scary time. And it was a big challenge actually to deal with that. And it would have been, as I said, midway through the year after Madrid, and at the end of the year was London the grand final in London, and that was our first qualifying race for the Commonwealth Games, which was one of my biggest goals for that year, was to qualify there. And I came out of hospital with about 6 to 8 weeks, I think it would have been, till London, and I guess the odds were heavily against me, but somehow I was able to get myself into good enough shape to be able to go to London and get in the top 6, I think it was, to qualify for the Commonwealth Games. But it was just a lot of those challenges I've had to face over the years, and I guess that was the hardest ones, and it's helped the ones that have followed. I guess easier to deal with, in a sense.
And I mean, it's the highs and the lows. Under 23 world champ to sitting in hospital for a few weeks with a hole in your lung. It's quite a juxtaposition. Did you at any point, I mean, trying to get your campaign on track for the 2014 Glasgow Commonwealth Games selection, and then what would be 2 years later the Rio Olympic Games, was there ever a point amongst the calf injuries, the hole in the lung, the plantar fasciitis, where you felt like quitting?
No, in that if my body was able to continue, then I was willing to continue. But back in 2013, when I went to hospital for a good half a week or a week, they didn't know what it was. They just saw a shadow on the lung, and it took a long time to rule out things like cancer and a tumour, those type of things. So yeah, in those first few days, triathlon was thrown out the window. That was not even a concern at all when they're talking that this could potentially be cancer and tumour and those type of things. So I wouldn't say at that stage I was thinking about quitting. And just at that stage, triathlon was very insignificant.
Yeah.
So yeah, but when in the other times when there was injuries and those type of things, no, I've never thought that it was time to throw in the towel. I have wondered whether my body will ever be able to cope with the load that I want it to do. But what's the load that you want it to do? I mean, no one really knows. I guess you always want it to be able to do more. So that's a hard question to answer.
It's the art and the science. What's made you wonder, though, Aaron? The returning injuries, or?
Yeah, well, I guess people that have not so much calves and those type of small little tears that I've had in the past that they've been actually quite easy to overcome, but it's more just the plantar fasciitis and those type of ones where they're just reoccurring, and you sometimes wonder, is this ever going to go away? Am I just stuck with waking up every morning and the first couple of steps out of bed, or the first 10 minutes of a run after a hard day the day before is going to be a bit painful? And so they're the questions that sometimes I ask. But touch wood, I'm sitting on some wood now actually, and I've just knocked on it there. I've just torn my plantar fascia about a couple of months ago, and so I've had to do that whole rehab side of it, and now coming back out the other side, and it seems to be all going well at this stage. So hopefully that the actual tearing of the plantar fascia is in the long run a good thing for it.
Yeah, well, I know in my work as a physiotherapist, I've had several athletes over the years with chronic plantar fasciitis, and one of them a surf athlete who finally tore it during a race, and off the back of that, had success in finally getting on top of it. So Aaron, I hope we wish you all the success, going forwards with it. You're actually over at the moment in the UK, in Yorkshire, I believe, getting some training in with the.
No, you got to say it right. It's Yorkshire. That's how they say it. It's not. They say it a funny way, and anyone that's from Yorkshire that just listened to me say that will say you just sounded terrible.
You butchered it. You butchered it one more time, Aaron. How do we pronounce it?
Yorkshire. You got to really Yorkshire.
So mate, you're over there. You've partnered up, I believe, with Alistair and Johnny Brownlee, and you've been putting some miles in with those lads. What took you over there at this stage?
My girlfriend, Non Stanford, is British athlete, obviously. Oh, not obviously. Some people might not know that, but yeah, she's a British athlete who finished fourth at the Rio Olympics last year, and it was getting quite difficult leading into Rio. Well, we always knew leading into Rio that she had her training environment, I had mine, and we had to just get through that period of our relationship, and then reassess after Rio how we were going to best manage spending a lot more time together. And an opportunity came up for me to base myself in Leeds, and obviously it's I'm trying to think now. At Rio Olympics, I think the Leeds Triathlon Centre got first, second in Jonathan and Alistair, and third and fourth in Vicky Holland and Non Stanford, along with Richard Varga was around about 10th as well on the men's side. So out of the 5 athletes that went, just about all of them come away with a medal. So they're obviously doing something right here. So when the opportunity came up to A, spend a lot more time with Non, be in the same environment, and B, train with what has been the best triathlon squad over the last 4 years, it was too good of an opportunity not to take. And despite we're in May now, and the weather is just starting to ever so slightly warm up a little bit, so that puts a smile on my face. But I've endured the most of the British winter so far, and I guess I'm coming out the other side.
So you've gone from the warmth most of the year of Wollongong to far further north. What's one thing, if you're in obviously a super high performance environment, as you mentioned, some of the athletes that you're regularly training with there, is there one insight, one thing you've picked up that's been a surprise for you training with the likes of Johnny and Alistair and Richard and Non? And what's one thing you've picked up that you wouldn't have expected?
Well, I don't know if it's not that I didn't expect it, but it's I guess the way the environment operates here. There's no stone unturned, no stone left unturned, I should say. Everything is thought of in detail, and everything's done. If something's worth doing, it's done properly, and that's their motto. They don't do anything half-assed, or they don't do anything to 99% right. Everything's done at 100% right, and the support team around them here is, I would say second to none, and that allows them to be able to do that. And yeah, so and that's not so much that it surprised me, but it's no secret or no wonder that this triathlon centre in Leeds is getting the results with the in-depth thought that goes into every single decision made to make them a better athlete.
So can you give me an example, or give listeners, I should say, Aaron, an example of, as you say, no stone being left unturned?
Well, I don't know if they want me to give away their secrets.
No trade secrets divulged. But
no. It's just they have their swimming squad, and then they have their running coach. They have their sports science department. They've got their sports strength and conditioning coach. They've got physios on hand. They've got doctors on hand. They just set up the support staff around them to just make sure that every little thing that they do is done to better them as an athlete. And they've got so many different people to bounce back ideas from, to make sure that every decision, like I said, every decision that they make, they're doing it to make themselves a better athlete. And so they've just got, then I guess that they deservedly so that British Triathlon, I guess they're funded quite well because they're getting results, aren't they? So they have the finances aside to be able to make that happen. And
so is there one thing you've changed, Aaron, in your training or your mindset since basing yourself over there in Yorkshire? I still can't say it.
Yeah. Good question. I came from, if Leeds is the best results-wise, the best triathlon squad out there, then probably where I've come from in Wollongong is probably the second best with, I guess if you look at last Olympics, obviously Gwen won, and myself, Barbara Riveros and Ryan Bailey were all inside the top 10. So there's 4 athletes inside the top 10 with the gold medal. So on paper, that's probably the second best environment. So I haven't come from a performance environment that was far inferior. It's just that, I guess a lot more thought goes into some decisions that I make. And if it's not, like I said earlier, if it's worth doing, then it's worth doing properly. It's not, this might help me, so I'll go do that. But if I'm going to go do it, then we're going to do it properly.
Yeah. Got it.
And just like a little, you asked for an example. We wanted to go do a hard swim the other day, and one of the pools that we swim at is probably not on a Monday. So we normally do a hard swim on a Tuesday, but we wanted to do a hard swim on a Monday. And where we swim on a Monday, the pool isn't great. It's just a 20-meter pool with small lane ropes, so it's a bit harder to swim hard in it. And where maybe I might have gone, we can still get a hard swim done in there. They've gone, no, if we're going to do the hard swim, we're going to go to a pool that we can do it properly. So we're going to go make sure that some staff go and book us some lanes so that we can go and do this hard swim properly in a proper pool.
Yep.
And so that's just a small example of where here they'll go, no, if we're going to do it properly, we're going to go to this pool that we can do it properly, not just going to go to the small 20-meter pool and sort of get a hard swim done.
And so that's a great example. So, and you'll get in the car and drive the half an hour, whatever it is, to get to an Olympic distance pool where you can knock it out.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's literally not even about the distance driving. It was just that on a Monday we normally swim in this small pool because it's normally an easy session. But the way the week fell, we wanted to do the hard swim on Monday, and so it's still same distance away from the house. It was just changing lane times and stuff to make sure that we could get that hard swim done on a Monday.
So, Aaron, your success, Australian Olympian, 2016 Rio, bronze medalist in the relay event in the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. Rio, what's one memory from Rio that'll forever stick with you? You finished 9th, so a very strong race, top 10. What's one memory that will stick with you from Rio, your debut Olympic Games?
There's quite a few. I guess it's not really, I guess it's not really a memory, but it's a feeling. My respect for the athletes like the Usain Bolts, the Michael Phelps, and to a certain extent Alistair now, who's got back-to-back Olympic golds, is how hard it is to actually get it right. You've got one day every 4 years to get it right, and that's harder than what you think. Like, there's a lot of days in between those 4 years, and you've got to get it that right on that one day. And people like those athletes that I mentioned, they've continuously got it right time and time again on that one day that mattered. And I guess my respect for that and Olympic athletes that have been able to do that after experiencing it myself, where, yeah, like you said, I got 9th and it's a top 10, my first Olympic Games. It's not a terrible result, but I didn't have the best day that I think I could have had. And to see other athletes being able to do that was something that sticks with me. My respect for those type of athletes has risen.
In Rio, Aaron, we've caught up with your teammate Ryan Fisher previously, and Ryan's recounted his Rio experience. But what didn't go to plan for you during your Rio outing? I
guess, well, yeah, I had a good swim. I was in that lead group. I was where I needed to be. Ride was fine. It's just the run, and particularly the back half of the run, let me down. And I think part of it was, you don't like to have excuses or anything like that, but I just wasn't. I didn't get the running required leading into the race that I would have liked. We tried to best manage it because of the plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
We tried to best manage it we could, but there was up until Leeds WTS last year, which was in June, I was running probably 50% of the load that I would like to do and would normally do. And so that really hindered being able to run what I'm capable of. And so I guess that leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth that you're capable of better, but you weren't able to deliver it on, like I said, that one day that you really wanted to.
Every 4 years.
Yeah, and for a long time, well, not a long time, but a good couple of months post Rio, I didn't want to think about the race. To be honest, I still haven't looked at the results. I know I came 9th, and I know roughly where people were around me, but I couldn't tell you who was 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. I couldn't tell you what time I ran. I couldn't tell you anything like that because I still haven't actually opened up the results.
Wow.
But over time, I've slowly come to accept that that's what I had on the day, and I gave it 100%. And so for that, I'm proud of that effort. Yeah. I
mean, going, ordinarily, Aaron, with a full preparation, I presume you would have gone in with every expectation of potentially a podium performance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you look at the way the race panned out, I don't see that was an unrealistic goal. I think that was very, very realistic and very achievable if I was able to have that one day where I was able to put it all together to my best of my ability.
Mate, let's go into a performance round. So I liken this to a bit of an interval session, mate. So it's a bit of a rapid-fire series of questions with your answers.
I'm always really bad at these ones.
Let's see how you go.
Having to think on the spot.
Let's see how you go. Training session most disliked, Aaron?
Probably a hard run session when you're not feeling great.
Training session most loved?
A hard run session when you're feeling great.
Favourite pre-race meal?
I've got to go with pizza.
Pizza, what sort?
Anything really. Something that's probably not too meaty, so more of a chicken with a few vegetables, but yeah, anything really.
Typical bedtime?
Probably not early enough. More 11 p.m, 10:30, 11.
Morning time get up. What time do you get up? Morning rise time?
7 a.m. 7 a.m. for a 7:40 swim.
7 a.m. for a 7:40 swim. They're gentlemen and lady hours, mate. That's very nice. Ladies in it. I couldn't think of what's the gender neutral for gentlemen and ladies. So that's nice compared to some of the Australian swim times.
Well, yeah. When you're professional athlete and that's all you do, you've got a bit of time. So I don't know why we need to be up at 5 a.m. and in the water at 5:30, but
interesting,
anyway,
isn't it? Interesting. Mate, who's the athlete that you most admire and why?
Good question. I grew up admiring, like I mentioned before, Ian Thorpe, and I guess that because I came from a swimming background and his ability to win back-to-back, to continually better himself, to have a target on his back for so many years and still be able to get the job done. Not just get the job done, and generally in a world record time was always impressive to me. And I was at that age then where idols like that were a big thing, and especially when I was probably 10 to 15 years old at the time. So, Ian Thorpe was someone that I really grew up admiring.
Thorpe, toughest competitor you've ever raced and why?
Toughest competitor? I've had a few duels over the time. I guess as a junior growing up, Sam Appleton, who's racing still to this day, we always had some big duel, big rivalry. Not rivalry. We were actually really good friends and lived together. But when we got onto the racetrack as a junior, we always used to go hammer and tongs, and it was always a close one. Now. Australian-wise, probably Ryan Bailey. We've had a couple of good duels over the years, along with Dan Wilson at Noosa and a couple of other of those races. And I guess I've got to say the Brownlee boys there. Not that I haven't yet been much competition to them, but they've always been the benchmark and been probably the toughest competitors that you're always striving to beat.
Is there a mantra, Aaron, that or a bit of self-talk or something that you'll often recite to yourself when you're racing or you're about to take to the start line?
No, not really. I mean, no, I like to keep things pretty relaxed leading into the race and then just going with it during the race. So yeah, there's not really much there's no motivational speech before I step onto the pontoon.
Your best recovery tip, Aaron?
Depends if you've got a race coming up. A beer and chips after a race always goes down quite nice.
That sounds a little bit like a Richard Murray, mate, after winning Super League.
Yeah, beer, pizza, beer, burger and chips is normally my go-to.
Go-to recovery. One word to describe your racing style.
One word. Why do you only give us one word? I need more than one. Aggressive. How
would you describe, Aaron, being in the zone?
Being in the zone, I probably where you're in a point where things are going on around you, but you're not realising it. You're just within that zone.
And when was the last time you were in the zone?
When was the last time I was in the zone? I'm going to say probably the end of 2015 at Chicago WTS, where I was fully within the zone and just in a good headspace, good moment. And what was going on around me didn't really matter because I knew I was in a good place.
And describe the feelings in your body. Was it you're just completely? Were you aware of the pain you were in?
Well, I mean, you're aware it's there, but it actually almost feels good because generally it's you're probably going well, and B, others around you seem to be hurting more than you are. So you're aware of it, but it's actually it's almost a good pain in a sick sort of way.
And you're nearly out of the performance round, mate. You're doing very well. What's the silliest thing you've ever done when it comes to being injured?
Well, this isn't actually what I did, but I might actually maybe we can add a video to this podcast. I'm not sure, but when I was injured with plantar fascia, when I tore my plantar fascia, I was in those moon boots. And it was actually Australia Day, which doubles as my birthday. And I had a few people over, and because I had just been injured, I'm like, well, I'm out for the next couple of months. I may as well make the most of Australia Day and my birthday. So we're having a few drinks. And next minute, the boot comes off, and one of my housemates was doing a shoey out of the boot. So we poured a beer into that, and out of my sweaty boot that I had on through a hot summer's day in Australia, he sculled a beer. Which that was probably, that wasn't me doing it, but I was a part of that act, I guess.
You provided the sweat.
Yeah, I provided the sweat and the boot, and he probably drank my beer as well.
Oh, mate, well, we must get that in there. Must get that in the show notes, so we'll tag that up. We'll liaise on that video. Aaron, and mate, the last question of the performance round, scrunch or fold? Scrunch. Yeah. Beautiful, mate.
Yeah.
Let's go into a bit of a forwards trajectory here. Aaron, what's on the bucket list for you, mate, both inside sport and outside of sport? Outside
of sport, I understand this may not ever happen, but I would love to one day climb Mount Everest. You ask my housemates, watch documentaries, videos, talked about it all the time. I would love to one day be able to climb Mount Everest. Maybe it might happen one day, but you never. I know that's maybe a bit unlikely. Within sport, I think I've still got a lot to give within ITU over the next few years, and then I guess I would love to one day do Hawaii and do it well. So yeah, that's a bucket list. And Challenge Roth, I've always watched that. Well, not always, but over the last few years, seen that and going, that one looks like a good one to do.
And so for listeners that aren't triathlon savvy, obviously Aaron's referring to the Kona Ironman, the World Ironman Championships, the granddaddy, they save them all, and Challenge Roth. Ryan, in terms of a fun question, if you could have dinner with 3 people, who'd be at that dinner table and why?
I don't like this question because it always changes. Who would I like to have at my dinner table? Probably, Ian Thorpe. I've never met him before, so someone that I grew up idolising would be good to have there. Someone who can cook, so I don't have to do the cooking, or someone. So maybe we'll go Gordon Ramsay, actually, because I think he'd have something funny to say.
And he's a triathlete.
He is a triathlete too. Well, yeah, loosely, I think. But
you haven't run into him over there in the UK? Bounced around on the bike?
No, I actually haven't. But I've been seeing on Facebook all of these Gordon Ramsay quotes and stuff like that, and they always make me laugh. So I think he would not only be good company, he'd probably be a good cook, and I guess we've got something in common. And the third person, this one's for the girlfriend. I better have non over for dinner as well.
Wise man, Aaron. And with regards to your Mount Everest ambition, I'll send you a link, Aaron, over there in Leeds to Alicia Azar. She appeared on episode 19 of this show, and Alicia was actually the youngest Aussie to ever scale Everest, Aaron. So I reckon that might be a bit of inspirational material. She got up there from memory, I think it was 15, 16, might have been 17. Just an incredible story. So, mate, if we see you shift from tri-suits to polar gear, we'll understand what's happened. If you could boil, Aaron, all your learnings over the years from your triathlon career to date into one piece of advice you'd give to people looking to perform at their best, not just inside triathlon, but across the board, whatever the endeavour, what would it be, mate? What would be the one bit of advice you'd espouse?
There's a famous quote about the Stonecutter that he hammered away he kept hitting the stone for 100 times, and on the 101st time it finally cracked in two, and it wasn't that 101st time that actually maybe did the crack, but it was all those 100 that went before it. And I guess I like to tell people, and especially young kids within triathlon, but I guess it doesn't need to just relate to triathlon, but be a stonecutter, be not looking for instant gratification, be continually to pound that rock, because things don't happen overnight, and especially I guess if I relate it to triathlon, things take a long time, and people that are within triathlon that are looking for instant gratification, and generally those that fall by the wayside, that aren't willing to go through those highs and lows that we all have to go through from time to time. So yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I give to most people that ask for it.
Did someone give you significant in your world, give you that bit of advice and share that story with you, so to speak?
Well, that analogy or that stonecutter story, I guess, came from my coach Jamie Turner. So yeah, that's where I got it from. But I think it fits well with, especially with in triathlon terms. But it doesn't just have to, like I said, doesn't just have to relate to triathletes. But especially within our sport and sporting people in general, you need to be able to keep pounding that rock even when times are tough.
Yeah, beautiful. And, mate, we're nearly crossing the finish line tape, but I've got to ask you, I don't know the origin of the nickname. I'm sure you've shared it many times, but Bugsy, where's that come from?
So it again came from my coach, my previous coach, Jamie Turner. Like I said, he had me had worked with me from such a young age, and he called up my house phone when I was probably 15, and he was speaking to my mum, and they were just chatting, and then my mum said, "Oh, I guess you want to speak to Bugs Whiskers," because that's what she used to call me. And mum handed me the phone, and he goes, "Bugs, eh?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what mum calls me, blah, blah, blah." A bit of a term of endearment from my mum. And 12 years on, it's still been one of my nicknames to date. And I've actually got a tattoo on my ribs of Bugs Bunny and get little bug stickers put on my bike. So I guess it's almost come a bit of a thing. But funnily, no one over here calls me Bugs, so I don't get it as much anymore.
What do they call you over in the UK?
Just Royle. I think northern, especially Yorkshiremen and women, generally they're not very soft. They're very hard type of people. So I don't think Bugs sits really well with them. They're just Royle. Oi, Royle. That's what they call me.
It's too soft. And how cold does it get, Royle?
It's not too bad. I mean, if you dress, like you say, if you dress up fine, you're going to be okay. You're just going to have to put up with some miserable wet weather riding, and weather, but it's not too bad. We're not talking. I had some friends that lived in Canada and the Midwest in America, which gets down to -40. We're not talking that. So I keep telling myself that when I have to go out and ride in, and it's a couple of degrees and pouring rain, but. Yeah, I guess I got to try and tell myself, because I've got to live here over the next few years, I've got to try and tell myself it's not too bad.
Mate, in closing, we like to have the guests issue the listeners with a bit of a physical challenge for the week. So it can be entry level or it can be extremely taxing and difficult. What's Aaron Bugsy Royley's challenge to listeners for the week going to be?
Athletic-wise,
yep.
Exercise-wise?
Yep, can be athletic, could be something else. We've had Nick Willis issue the gardening challenge to get out and get your hands in the dirt.
Well, that's actually not a bad one. I'm looking out in our backyard now, and Non has gone away to race in Chengdu and Yokohama WTS, and she's given me one job to do and go out and do some gardening out the back. So maybe I got to issue that to myself, and maybe I don't issue that to other people because it doesn't look fun. One challenge for a week. 30 minutes of exercise for 7 days straight. At least 30 minutes of exercise for 7 days straight.
So we'll call it
how's that sound?
The 30x7 challenge from Aaron. I like it, mate. I like it. And listeners, if you take on the challenge, jump on social and let both Aaron and myself know what you've been up to there. And in terms of social and following your journey going forwards, obviously Tokyo 2020 and the Commonwealth Games in between that here on the Gold Coast. Where can listeners find out more about your journey and follow you, mate?
So I try and keep my social media up to date. So Twitter, I think it's at Royle90 and Aaron Royle on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page and my website as well. So all the usual sort of stuff, and I do my best to try and keep it up to date, but generally it's funny over the winter actually. It's too cold to stop and get your phone out to take a photo. So my Instagram's lacking over the winter months. So hopefully as we warm up, you might see me a bit more active.
Your social media activity might increase. So that's brilliant. Well, in many ways, it goes a long way to describing some of your training mates. As they would put it. What's the word? Lack of creativity on some of the posts. Their fingers are too cold. Literally it is. You grab your phone and you can't feel anything. You say, I'll put it back in my pocket. Keep riding. Oh, brilliant, mate. Well, on behalf of myself and the listeners, Aaron, we wish you all the best. And, there's been some great milestones so far in your career, but, mate, I dare say that the best is definitely ahead for you. So thanks for taking time out for avoiding your tasks delegated by Non there to jump on and share around your career to date and some of your key learnings. So really appreciate it, Aaron.
Yep, no, thanks for listening and thanks for having me.
So, listeners, there you have it. Another episode of the Physical Performance Show in the bag. Mr. Aaron Royle. If you enjoyed today's episode or took something out of it, a learning, an insight, or just enjoyed the stories, be sure to let Aaron and myself know. You'll find our social media handles over with the show notes at pogophysio.com.au, or simply look us up online and drop us a message, a tweet, or an Instagram message. And if you enjoyed the episode and you know a triathlete that would find this stimulating and interesting, please share the episode with them. You can do that quite easily from today's technology just by copying the URL from whatever platform you're listening to the podcast in. So a big thanks if you're sharing the episode around amongst fellow peak performers. Guys, if you'd like to subscribe to the Physical Performance Show, it's really easy. Simply hit subscribe. Funny that, from within inside your app, and that'll automatically populate the future editions each week into your app for your listening pleasure. Also, I hope so. Massive thank you, as always, to the good folk who bring this podcast to you each and every week, and that is none other than Mr. Daryl Misson, audio engineer, and Susan Wilkin, the show's VA. Massive thanks, guys, to you both. Without your work behind the scenes, this show is going nowhere other than my head. So thank you both. Really appreciate it. If you're into running, triathlon even, obviously if you tune in today, there's a fair chance you are a triathlete or you know a triathlete, then be sure to check out my Amazon running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain-Free. Just as the title outlines, it is possible for you to run pain-free. If you're a runner that's been frustrated with injury, if you're a runner that just can't break through from a current injury, or if you've ever thought running just inevitably leads to injuries, then this is the book for you. It's 330 pages, packed full of 5 steps that takes you through the framework that I've used in the treatment room for 11 years with thousands of runners and triathletes to help keep them injury-free. It's available on iBooks, also Audible for the audio versions, or on the digitally through Kindle, or also in the good old paperback version via Amazon or pogophysio.com.au. Coming up in next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, I make good on a guest who we had lined up quite a few episodes ago, but due to my scheduling error, we missed getting our opportunity to record the interview. But recently I finally got to catch up with a gentleman who I've been looking forward to speaking with for quite some time, and that's Dr. Peter Malliaras. Now, this is the Physical Performance Show's first expert, and this is a little bit of a series that I'd like to start to bring into the Physical Performance Show. And so if you do like the idea of hearing from experts intermittently amongst the athletes that are the backbone of this show, the performers, then please let me know. Dr. Peter Malliaras is an associate professor and a tendinopathy specialist physiotherapist. Peter hails from Melbourne, Monash University and La Trobe University, and Peter spends 4/5 of his week researching tendons and how to best rehabilitate them. The other 1/5 of his week is spent in practice at Complete Sports Care in Victoria, in Melbourne, administering treatment for people's troublesome tendon problems. So I brought this one as the first expert to you, the listeners, because I know in my work I see so many patients who really struggle with tendon injuries. It's a big area of sports medicine that unfortunately isn't always dealt with well. So if you're listening in, you've ever had a troublesome Achilles tendon, patella tendon, proximal hamstring tendon, side of your hip, or even plantar fasciitis, be sure to tune in next week to episode 62 of the Physical Performance Show to hear from Peter Malliaras as he outlines some really practical, take it away and apply it immediately great advice from one of the world's leading experts in tendons. So next week, Dr. Peter Malliaras. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.